6, between number 6 and number 7, because Associate Chancellor Wendell Williams had an appointment. He might be late. So I need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, Li Chang second. So we need to have an oral vote. So Junie, are you ready?
I'm ready, and everybody just be patient with me. This is my first run. Eric Black.
Here.
And this is a vote to move agenda item 6,
6 and 7, just switch it.
7.
Which some? Mhm.
So Eric Black, is that a
Yeah.
Amy Bro,
Yes.
Robert Broomfield,
Yes.
Ying Chen,
Yes.
Farhan Chowdhury,
Yay.
Lisbeth Dalala,
Yes.
Michael Eichholz,
Yes.
Scott Gilbert, Rolando Gonzalez Torres, Michael Hyland, Elaine Jerkowski, Arash Kamaji, Seung-Hee Lee,
Yes.
Yu-Ting Lee,
Yes.
Patrick McGrath,
Yes.
Stacy McKinney, and I think she's on a device she can't speak. Khalid Mexon, Walter Metz, Grant Miller, Amanda Pangrazio,
Yes.
Mike Phillips, Jeffrey Punske,
Yes.
Bethany Rader,
Yes.
Walter Ray,
Yes.
Lorelei Ritchie, Diana Sarko,
Yes.
Jennifer Sherry, I thought I had her marked that she was here, but I don't see. Joseph Ceramic,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Did you were you calling Lorelei Ritchie? Because I think my internet just went out.
I did get, yes, so yes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. It's a yes.
Okay. But Jennifer Sherry, I didn't hear her.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm here, Julie,
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. And
And I
for your-
said yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, miss. Oh, maybe I wrote, okay, sorry. Julie,
And
take
did
it.
you
No, no worries.
Remember I
did you-
said, be patient with
Did
me.
you catch my vote while you were asking for other people?
I did get yours.
Okay, great.
Sylvia, Tom,
Yes.
LeChang Wang,
Yes.
Sherry Watson,
Yes.
Rachel Whaley,
Yes.
and
You
I'm
need a
sorry, I
vote too,
just gonna
Julie.
have to ask, Andrew Yupa,
Yupa, yeah, that's right. Yes. Mhm.
okay.
You need a vote too, Julie.
I did, yeah, I did, but
Okay.
yes, I voted yes. And
That's
is that
everyone.
Okay. Okay,
Okay, thank you. Only Senator vote. So thank you. Obviously the roll call, we can do it virtually. So we can skip that. Would that be okay with you guys? Thank you.
yes.
We need to approve the minutes. So first of all, any question, corrections, comments about the minutes on May 10th? No question or no correction? Okay, so
Motion to approve minutes?
thank you. Anyone second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mike. So we need to do a voice vote again. Junie, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Thank
Eric
you.
Black.
Yeah.
And this is, I'm sorry, this is a vote for the minutes. Amy Bro,
Yes.
Robert Broomfeld,
Yes.
Ying Chen, Ying Chen, Farhan Chowdhury,
Yes.
Elizabeth Dalala,
Yes.
Michael Eichholz.
Yes.
I'm going to call those who didn't respond the first time in case someone has joined. Scott Gilbert,
I think he's
I'm sorry,
absent, yeah. Excuse-
Rolando Gonzalez Torres, Michael Hyland,
Yes.
Elaine Drakowski,
Sure.
Arash Kamaji or Kamahi. Sorry, Sung Hing Lee,
Yes.
Yung Ting Lee,
Yes,
Patrick McGrath,
Yes.
Stacy McKinney, Khalid Mexam, Walter Metz, Grant Miller, Amanda Pagazio,
Yes.
Mike Phillips,
Yes.
Jeffrey Punske,
Yes.
Bethany Rader,
Yes.
Walter Ray,
Yes.
Lorelei Ritchie, Diana Sarko,
Yes.
Jennifer Sherry, Jennifer Sherry,
Yes.
Joseph Schmidt,
Yes.
Julie Tate, yes. Sylvia Toms,
Abstain.
Lee Chang Wang,
Yes.
Sherry Watson,
Yes.
Rachel Whaley,
Yes.
and Andrew Yupa.
Yes.
That's 23 yeses and 1 abstain.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
So minutes approved, thank you. The next one on the agenda, the report from me. Good afternoon, everyone. As you know, our May issue of faculty Senate updates and FIY went out to all faculty members by the end of May. We send off the newsletter only when we have faculty Senate meetings. In addition, I have a few business matters to report to you briefly. First, or number one, faculty senator worked with Dr. Paul Fraser, Vice Chancellor of Anti-Racism, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We organized an Asian American Symposium virtually on May 25th during the Asian American Heritage Month. Second, on June 6th and July 11th, that means yesterday, I attended 2 of the EOC, Emergency Operating Committee meetings, where we discussed the fall semester reopening plan on campus health and safety issues and COVID-19 strategies. Number 3, on June 9th, I had a meeting with Chancellor Lan, and we talked about faculty hires, faculty equity issues, and the university strategic plan. I reiterate that the shared governance, faculty retention, and operating people issues are still concerns to us. Number 4, on June 17th, I had an individual meeting with Provost Kumaraju, and we talked about certain concerns. We need to certain academic units that might have violated shared governance and operating people procedures in their decision-making. And 5, on June 15th, the Provost Search Committee members had their first meeting with Chancellor's office and with Kifa consultants. In fact, some of the senators who attended the meeting. We discussed the possible timeline and listened to the ideas and suggestions from the committee members with regard to the responsibility and expectation of the future provost candidates. Number 6, on June 23rd, I had a Zoom meeting with Associate Chancellor Wendell Williams, Associate Provost Mark Morris, and Provost Kumaraju about the no-show federal policy compliance. And in fact, a document was shared with you by email. And today, Associate Chancellor Wendell Williams will talk to us. 7, I had 2 meetings with Associate Provost Mark Morris. At the first meeting on May 12th, Governance Committee co-chair Patrick McRose and Khalid Maxine attended the meeting with me. On June 28th, I had an individual meeting with Associate Provost Mark Morris. We talked about the open paper process, faculty hire process, and equity issues. And finally, I attended the new employee lunch at noon last week. That means July 6th, to represent the faculty senate as the constituencies. Thank you so much. Any question, comments, please? Okay, if there's no question, no comments, we're going to move to the next item, number 5, Q&A session with Chancellor and Provost. Let me see whether the Chancellor is here. I know Provost is here. Okay, Senator George Remick.
So who is here exactly? So I can frame my question to the appropriate person. Oh, just a provost. Okay. Well, thank you, Provost, for sending out the data on enrollment this morning to all of us. I have a follow-up question relating to it, which is, it seems from my glance of the data that we're heading in a very positive direction this fall, and that's taken years and years of work to get there. However, I'm a little concerned about the 4% slip in retention. And it seems like we had a 4% slip last year. Now, I guess I want to understand this and put this in appropriate context. Is this to be expected because of the COVID problems that every university in the country has been dealing with the last 2 years? Or have we just not put the right staffing and resources into retention efforts? Is there something, some different strategy we should be employing at this point towards getting that number up? I would be much happier with 75%, 80% retention than something which I think is frankly abysmal and should not be tolerated around this campus when we're in the 60s. That's unacceptable. So could you please help me understand this retention part of the puzzle?
So Joe, thank you for your question. It's something that I've also been thinking about quite a bit. So to answer parts of your question, we really haven't changed our strategy in any way. And we are 6 weeks out, and when I look at the data of how much we gain in these 6 weeks for the last couple of years, so then what will be our anticipated number? I think that we will get close to like 71% based on last 2 years. So 2 years ago, we were close to like, closer to 80%. Last year, we were 75 point some percent. This year will be 70 or 71%. So I think
why the 5% decline per year?
Yeah, so there are many variables that could potentially sort of be contributing to it. Some of it could be that because during the pandemic, students had the pass, no pass. So that may have helped to some extent, and now it might not be helping as much because students, like right now, this time students have been suspended. So that could be a variable. Whereas prior, we may not have had that suspension, or students just sense of, okay, I can continue on. That may have been one of the variables. So that's something to keep in mind, whether the pass, no pass could have helped or hurt during the pandemic. The other thing is that students, because, and these are all like conjecture, right? We really don't know. So it's possible that students, who get jobs might decide, okay, I'm going to work for some time, I'm not coming back. So they might be stopping out. That's a possibility that students are not coming back. But on our end, we are calling students and doing all the things that we have done in the past. So like for example, like in fall, we try to get everyone registered for spring. In spring, we try to get everyone registered for fall and made the phone calls and texts and so on so that everyone comes back. So those are like just some thoughts in terms of it, trying to figure out what's going on. And then something else to keep in mind, like nationally, we were kind of doing well compared to the national trend. Nationally, on average, it's around like 73%. So our numbers were higher. So we were doing better. Now we might be close to where others are. So those are just some thoughts.
Thank you, Joe, for your questions. Thank you, Provost Kumraju, for your answer. And next question from Sunita Delana.
Thank you, Mira. That was helpful and interesting, but it made me wonder, this pass, no pass thing that we did, and the students insisted they needed it longer, so we instituted it for a longer period of time. And I can see it could be helpful to some, but I could see how it could be extremely harmful because they pay less attention because all they have to do is pass, and we know that they're learning less. All students, every age, have been learning less through this COVID time and the virtual teaching and not paying attention, even if their faces on the screen. So I'm just curious if we have a group that is trying to evaluate the efficacy of it and whether it was a positive or a negative, because it's very possible they're going to request that we continue something like this.
Yeah, so I think that one thing to just sort of have the data, I had shared prior Senate meetings about the percentage that took advantage of it. So it was like 23, 25%. So if you look at the retention rates and see if there's any sort of correlation between that and that, that's one thing. We do know that instructors have shared that students coming to the classes may not be as well prepared. So we have been providing some extra tutoring to units so that students who may have been sort of skating along can still get some help in the classes that they are in currently. This past spring, we didn't have the pass, no pass, but we did allow students to withdraw from the course, even past the withdrawal date. So we're seeing some of that. And as we're reaching out, so to Joe's point about what might be preventing students from registering. So let's say even if a student took pass, no pass, or the late withdrawal, what happens is that they run afoul. The great GPA may be okay, but they run afoul of the SAP, satisfactory academic progress, that they have to submit for financial aid. So financial aid requires that you complete 3/4 of your 2/3, so like 63 some percent, you should finish satisfactorily. So supposing I signed up for 12 credits and I took pass, no pass for 9, I actually only completed 3 credits. So I didn't do the satisfactory academic progress. So we have a bunch of students in that group who are then asking for exception to then enroll. So we have students who want to enroll, but who may not be able to because they are not meeting the SAP requirement. Then the other thing is that in prior years, we had provided the HERF money a little bit earlier. This year, just a little bit, maybe a week or so later. So we might see these numbers go up in the next few weeks. We have already seen in the last 2 weeks, there's a slight increase, like they're kind of closing the gap from last year to this year. So there are these variables that are going on.
Thank you. Next question from Senator Mike Eichel's.
Hi, Mira. I'm wondering if you've been able to compare our numbers across with other universities. It just, one of the things that stands out to me is, there's clearly long-term correlations between the state of the economy and job availability and enrollment in college. And I'm wondering if maybe that wouldn't explain why we're seeing such a decline in both graduate student enrollment and retention of students, and maybe some of these students are just getting a job instead of going back to school.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That's why I shared like the national average, because that tells you across the universities in the country what the retention rate is. So in the last couple of years, we were ahead. We were doing better than the national average. But this year, we might be sort of matching the national average or closer to the national average.
What about for graduate student enrollment? Do you know if other universities are seeing a decline?
In terms of just like retention or just
enrollment in general, yeah, new student enrollment.
Yeah, I don't think that they are seeing that decline that we are seeing here. If you look at our numbers, our applications and admissions are up quite a bit. Applications are up 28%, admissions are up 0.4%, but the registration is down of the new students. And I'll just give an example like Western. So I have a meeting every month with all the provosts of the Illinois State Universities. And they were sharing like Western Illinois and UIC and Northern, their international students are up. Whereas for us, that has not been up. So that's something that at the graduate student level, that is being impacted to some extent.
Thank you for your question. Next one from Senator.
Sorry, Yuting, if I can just also like share with Mike, in terms of the graduate students, something that we had shared, I think at the last meeting was that to be able to admit graduate students, you have to have enough advisors. And so when there is a reduction in faculty, they feel like we cannot take any more students. So it could be 2 here and 3 there and 1 there and 5 there. But when you add it all up, it can reduce your number of students that you bring in.
Thank you, Provost Camacho, for your addition comments. And next comments or question actually from Senator Josh Remick again.
Yeah, unless anybody has a different line of inquiry, I want to kind of continue really briefly on this graduate student enrollment piece that Senator Eichelch just mentioned. One thing that's occurred to me that happens all the time in my unit is we make a financial aid offer to somebody and it takes forever for the paperwork to be processed. And sometimes we lose a lot of students to other universities. So I think some of the decline is, I hate to say it, and you need to hear this, you've made some really bad decisions over the years with staffing and resources. And now we're paying the price for that. We have people in the graduate office that take weeks to turn around paperwork. Just routine paperwork takes weeks to get back sometimes. And that's probably because there's not enough staffing in that department.
Yeah,
so it's harming the entire university.
Yeah, so Joe, I mean, the point is well taken, and we are doing our best to take care of the extra applications that we have got. And so the staff are really working. They've been doing, some staff have been doing overtime. And we're also trying to work with the home units so that they send along the contracts. And so waiting for them to collect, you just send every day whatever contracts you come. So what arrives at the graduate school is kind of like a steady trickle rather than a big onslaught on one day. So we're working on that part of it, and we're trying to add more staff. So I think the grad school is a little bit more fuller today than they were maybe 2 months ago. So I'm just saying that we're trying to catch up as quickly as possible, but we're also working longer term on the pipeline from the grad school to the academic unit and back. That pipeline has to be much more in tune and smoother than, let's say there's room for improvement. And so that's a work in progress, but I think
as long as you're acknowledging a problem and that it's happened and things are corrected back, because this has harmed us.
Yeah.
We've turned students just don't come because they don't get an answer on financial aid or whatever.
Yeah. So like, when you have 28.86% up in applications, you're just talking about just the amount of processing that has to be done with the same number of staff. So we're trying to get there.
Thank you for the answer, Provost Coomarasio. And next question from Senator Jennifer Sherry.
Hi, Provost. I'd just like to make a comment about where the whole lowering of GPA falls into this, and maybe the variable is there. And, it just was kind of a concern whenever we did that, just to attract more students, or I'm sure there, it's multifaceted why it was done, but just some comment there about that may be a variable that can affect retention.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. We actually, in our discussions, when we have talked about that retention number, we have acknowledged that universities that are very selective, their retention is like 99, 97%. It's difficult to get in, and once you get in, you kind of like want to stay there. So we acknowledge that, okay, there are universities, because someone asked, like, how about universities that have like 90% or 100%? They say, yeah, there are those universities, and this is their profile. That's how they look. And so in terms of, does this have to do with our change in our admission standards? If you look at in 2019, December, that's when we did away with standardized test scores and said we just go with GPA. But then if you look at fall 20 and 21, it hasn't affected our retention. So it's something that we can sort of continue looking at and collecting data to see whom we are losing. So that's the part about once we have the data of whom we have lost, what's their background, how do they look? So that's, again, a point well taken that, we will follow up and provide that feedback.
Well, and another thing too is prior to students entering into the university system, when they decide to choose a major, they need to have more pre-onboarding prior to selecting majors, because I think some of our students get into a major and they don't really know what it entails. Mm-hmm. So it's really important for all of us to make sure that we do our part to inform prospective students on what the profession is like and what it entails. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments and questions, Senator Sherry. Next one from Senator Farhan Chowdhury.
Thank you, Yuting. So Provost, this goes back to the graduate student population. So historically speaking, last 10 years, whenever there is a budget cut, we always cut the GA budget, right? Even in the last year in engineering, there was about 50% reduction in GA offer. So if, let's say, the GA offers that we make, these are 25% GA offer. Unlike many other units, they make 50% offers. So number one, if you make a 25% GA offer, that's not competitive, right? So students going to go somewhere else. So that's number one. Number two, the number of GAs that are allocated for each unit, that has reduced considerably. So these are twofold things. Number one, we have to up our GA budget. And then number two, we have to basically increase the total number of GAs per unit. So as you know, graduate students without GA funding is going to go down and down. Inevitably, that's what we are seeing here, right? So it's a kind of like you inherited this and you probably try to make it better, but in the last year, we kind of see this downfall. It's a severe downfall. So especially in engineering and other STEM areas, this is very, very important. So that's my question, how to address this. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm kind of like surprised by that because of all in all the budget cuts that we have gone through, we've kind of kept the GA budget sacred as much as possible. All of the deans have been very particular about that. Like let's find money somewhere else, but not the GA budget. So that's one answer to that question. That we have, in my experience, when I've looked at the scenarios that were provided, that the GA budget has been protected. That's one thing. The second thing is about 25% or 50% is the unit makes that decision. So the unit has to change. I mean, the faculty have to speak up and say, hey, let's not, because the provost office doesn't just come and say, okay, you can only do 50%. Some years ago, that's what had happened from the provost office, is that 25% were not encouraged because that reduces the tuition, that increases the tuition waivers that are going out. But in the last few years, as we have faced so many budget cuts, we have not enforced that. And so the unit has to make that decision. So let's say unit X is doing that. The faculty in that unit X has to say, hey, we cannot remain attractive to students if we are doing 25%. We are going to do only, or at least half of them have to be 50%, half can be 25%. So it's a way of reshifting, because if you do it overnight, your number of students will come down compared to the last 2-3 years. So you might feel that sudden jerk. So it could be, okay, 3/4 of it will be 25%, and then we'll do the remaining 50% and slowly adjust so that ultimately you're only doing 50%. So I'm just saying that decision lies with the unit.
I totally understand your point, Provost, but the question is, when the money comes down from the dean towards the units, that money is significantly cut last year. So that's what I'm trying to get at. Bring that money up to what it was before, even year 2021, spring of 2021, for example. That might help a lot bringing in new students. And then the unit can decide whether they're going to offer, as you said, that's a wonderful idea. But there's a significant cut in engineering. So that's what I'm trying to bring that to your attention.
Yeah, and I'll follow up with the dean to see what's going on, because in terms of what was allocated, I remember for the last 3 years, I've said, whatever you got last time, you can use, you get the same amount. So there has not been that change. So I'll just follow up and see what's going on with the engineering GA budget.
All right, thank you so much.
Any more questions for the provost? I try to contact the chancellor. Chancellor is traveling, and he may join us at any moment. At this point, we can move on. So if you have no question for the provost. Oh, Chancellor Nan is here. Okay. Chancellor Nan, can you hear?
I am here. I am, Dr. Lee.
Okay.
How are you doing? I am
Great.
here, Dr. Lee. I'm here.
Great to hear your voice. Okay, any question for Chancellor Nan?
I have a question.
Okay,
I have a question.
okay, sure, Nan.
So the question I have, it relates to student enrollment, but I think it's more directed to the chancellor than the provost. And one of the concerns that I see is that there seems to be the need for just staffing at the clerical and administrative levels in order to help process a lot of particularly graduate students. In my own unit, we admitted people in April and May, and some of the students are still awaiting or have just received word of their admission, and they're international students. So this is impacting them, particularly for their visas and for those students that need to secure visas. And, I think the concern that I really have about this is that, are there enough folks to be able to process these individuals? We're increasing the number of students that we're admitting to campus, but do we have enough of the person power behind the scenes to be able to make that process somewhat expedient. And, is that something that is being even looked at? And I raise it because, I think sometimes we forget about the resources that are needed in order to make some of these initiatives happen and successful.
Well, Dr. Jerkowski, first of all, thank you so much for asking that question and pointing that out. And over the last 2 years, we have been asking the same question as we assess our workforce and what we are doing here to help. And what we have found, and just if you don't believe me, I can back this up with 2 recent audits that we just had that told us the same thing, and they were in totally different areas. But in these audits, they talked about us having bad business practices. We had non-existent business practices. So it wasn't that we didn't have enough staff, but that we did not equip our staff with business processes that would allow for us to communicate, so we wouldn't have a student, like you mentioned, hear from us 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, right? And what the audit told us is that one department just didn't talk to the other one. Right? It was that simple. It was that, if you want to do a better job, these 2 areas or 3 areas have to talk. The other part we found out through Ellucian was that we were underutilizing our technology. So our folks on campus are actually working harder rather than smarter, because again, we're not utilizing the technology that's already in place. So let me give you an example of why things may sit for a while. So I've worked at places, and I'm sure you have too. 20 years ago, they went away from signing everything on physical, on paper, and they went to electronic signature. Well, we're one of the few universities across the country that's not moved to doing things electronically. So, for us, it's really going to be a movement to, how do we shift and do much of what we're doing? I think somebody's got somebody may be talking there. Is that me or is that, can you guys hear that too? Oh, there it is. It stopped. So I think what we're trying to do going forward, so that we don't have these slowdowns in certain areas, especially as it relates to, processing, is that if we had an electronic signature where folks who prepared the files are sitting those files on the desk of someone who has to then move it forward to another person to get approval, what if that person's on vacation? What if that person's not at their desk? Why can't they sign it electronically en route, right, through their cell phone, through their laptop? So those are all things that our chief information officer is looking at right now. A lot of those recommendations from Ellucian, things that'll make our lives a little easier so we can process things faster. That's essentially what we're finding is the problem. And then I would be remiss though if I said some areas there is a sense of a lack of staffing. And we are looking at that in terms of how we can add staffing to those positions. But I always say we have to fix the process before we bring the people, because we can add 5 or 6 more people instead of a bad process and not have offices communicating with each other and be right back to where we started. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it's something we've been working on or talking about here for the last 2 years, but we're finally now at a place where we see where the real gaps are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question, Senator Joukowsky. Thank you, Chancellor Lam, for your response. We can have one more question for the Chancellor, then we would like to ask both Chancellor and Provost to wrap up. Okay, Senator Sherry.
Hi, Chancellor Lane. Nice to hear you.
Hey, Dr. Sherry.
How are you? I would just like to just echo what was mentioned at the EC meeting about maybe expediting faculty hires. I know it's been mentioned a few times, but just also the intention of offers that we're able to make, because we're seeing a lot of quality faculty either leave or not come because of the issues there. And so programs are missing out. Students are missing out. So these are all things that we need to really work upon. One thing that was brought to my attention is that some faculty are making a lot more at a community college than they are at a university. And so how can we bridge that gap in between? I know there's monies that are different in each institution, but it's very imperative that we're able to stay competitive and get quality faculty in our programs. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Sherry. On the first part of your question or comment, as it relates to processing and making sure that when we have potential candidates, faculty members, that we don't waste a lot of time in the bureaucracy of getting them hired, that doesn't slow us down. One of the things that we talked about at our leadership retreat last week in the HR area, and you'll see this in their new unit effectiveness plan, is more of a process that is clear in terms of how long or how short it'll take to onboard or get someone in place. So we're not waiting forever, and as we wait, they're getting 2 and 3 offers from other places and we lose them, and we've got to start at ground zero again. So I think you're going to see a lot of work in Renee Colombo's shop with making that a more seamless process so we don't lose people. The second half of your comment, we just finished A&P and a civil salary, internal equity salary study. And that was for civil and for A&P. And I think I talked about this with the executive committee a little bit. But our next step is to now look at a internal faculty salary survey to see how our faculty inside of their own disciplines, but how they compare to each other, and are they in the right position in the right place. That's really phase 1 of this project for that group to look at. I think Dr. Lee, with one of the Faculty Senate executive committees, is going to help us with that. We appreciate that. In addition, our CFO and others that'll serve on that group. But our next phase, to get to your point, will be to look at how our faculty compare to the market. And that would be similarly situated doctoral research universities. What are they being paid? In terms of how that relates to our institution versus their institution. If we have community colleges that are paying, depending on the rank, but paying faculty more than our faculty, then that is a problem. That's a big problem. You would hope that our faculty salaries, like at most places, are going to be higher than what they would be at community colleges. That's not taking anything away from the community college. I'm not disparaging them. But we will compare to our doctoral peer group research institutions to see what they're actually making. And as you know, just like this go round, if we're able to increase those salaries, like we're going to do for A&P and civil and ultimately faculty, right, that comes from obviously our state appropriations, our tuition revenue, our enrollment, obviously, when that continues to uptick, I think we'll have opportunities to be able to use those dollars to help right some of that's out of whack in those areas. So those are all areas that we're talking about and have some action placed on a few, but just doing some work there. I think that hopefully answers your question.
Well,
Yes,
thank you so much. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your question, Senator Sherry. Thank you, Chancellor Nan, for your answer. Because of time, Chancellor Nan, you have a couple of minutes to make some comments, maybe 3 minutes.
Well, Dr. Sherry must have been reading my mind, because one of my comments was about the work that we're going to do late summer, early fall on the faculty internal equity piece. We do think that's a critical piece, that if we get it right, we will not lose faculty. We'll be able to retain and attract faculty. The provost will tell you, and she and I hear this a lot, Sometimes we do lose faculty. They just, and I hate to say someone's better than us, but they've just gone on to other places that have great reputations and they have a great opportunity to move on to those places. And we could counter 4 or 5 times and, you know, they're still going to leave. There's something there that they either like or it's moving geographically to another city that they think will be better for their family. So there's some things that we just can't control, but there are some things that we can control. And that's just making sure that, you know, our salaries and our pays is going to be competitive where it would keep people here. And then Dr. Sherry, you know this, even things that we said we wanted to refocus on, like research. That's the #1 reason why faculty said they wanted to be here, and revamping our indirect cost. And I think your committee, Dr. Sherry, and others gave us some recommendations that I just sent up to our group yesterday to really approve all of it, all the recommendations that came forward that will help, I think, incentivize our faculty. It will make sure that they know they are here because we're obviously a research university, and that was an attraction when they first arrived. So we're going to try to get back to some of that. That's why it's one of our strategic pillars, but that'll be some more work there. I'll talk very briefly, very quickly on enrollment. You're hearing a lot about enrollment, but I would caution everyone, we still have 6 weeks to go. That's a lot of time. And we don't officially put a stamp on our enrollment until the 10th class day. So I'm very cautious in saying we've made it to the mountaintop, even though our numbers look really good in the areas where they need to look good. But I'm still cautious because I don't want people to get too relaxed and stop recruiting. We have other universities that are still trying to recruit our students. That's a fact. They're still trying to see if they can sway them away. We've had some success in the Southern Illinois region. That looks good. We've had success in the incoming freshman class, and it's like it's hopefully going to outpace the last freshman class. And then overall, we've got an initiative now where we're trying to use about $3.7 million to help with balances of our students who are trying to return to campus. These are students that have really good GPAs for the most part. They're doing fine. They just don't have the money to pay some of the balances, and we're trying to help out and do some of that. So that's one piece I do want to make a note of, is that we are working pretty hard on that. Final piece, our unit effectiveness plans. You'll hear a lot about what we're trying to accomplish in the strategic plan. In about another month, we will be posting in each area, that's academic and student affairs, we'll be posting in each area what each of the cabinet leaders in their areas are trying to achieve and their targets and measures within the actual strategic plan. So I don't want you, I know that Joe says this all the time in this case, but you know, we want to make sure it's not just a glossy strategic plan document that kind of sits on the shelf. The action part of that document is in the unit effectiveness plan. So at any given time, you'll be able to know what area is working on what are the results that they're trying to achieve. And that's how we'll do business going forward, so people can see the effort that's being put out across the university. Other than that, you know, our fall kickoff is already here. We are monitoring through our EOC everything related to COVID. You will see today, just announced out of the governor's office, there's going to be some revisions to the executive order. As soon as we get those revisions, we'll communicate it across the university so we can see what's going on there and keep people in the loop. But other than that, Dr. Lee, that's all I have. And again, appreciate everyone's efforts and what you're doing, and hope you're having a good summer.
Thank you so much, Chancellor Nan. So Provost Kumracha, do you have a couple of minutes to wrap up, or anything to wrap up?
Nothing in particular, other than we are working very hard the remaining 6 weeks to improve our enrollment and retention numbers and getting ready for the new semester.
Thank you, both Provost Kumracho and Chancellor Nan. Because of time, we need to move on. We we proved to switch the schedule between 6 and 7, and I saw Associate Chancellor Wendell Williams here. So I think we should move on, stick, what we proved. So we need to ask a committee report, which is brief, and then after that, then I'm going to ask Associate Chancellor Williams to talk about no-show. So executive committee, basically I reported, so I will skip that. Election committee.
Yes, I don't have much to report. We are just in a holding pattern waiting for faculty to be on contract again in order to do a special election to fill in the several Senate seats that we have yet to fill. So more to come on that in August and September. Thank you.
Thank you, Bethany. And UEPC, Undergraduate Education Policy Committee, and co-chairs, Senator Shramick and Metz. Senator Metz.
Yes, we are in a holding pattern. Traditionally in the summer, UEPC has no business. I expect a very busy year again.
Thank you.
From what the outgoing Associate Provost Chevalier told me, informed me last spring. There was still, and I'm going to be working soon with interim Associate Provost Yupa about that pipeline. So to be continued in September, I'm sure.
Thank you. Budget Committee and Senator Mike Echols and Senator Chaudhary, any update?
The University Budget Committee May 26th meeting was canceled, so there's nothing to report from that. And as far as I know, there's nothing else to report. Ron, do you have anything?
No, that's about it.
Okay, thank you. No, Committee on Committee, Inan Chukovsky and Sung Hee Lee.
Hi, we are just working on trying to recruit over the summer volunteers for our university-wide committees. And so that's the order of business that we're doing right now. And we're waiting for the new, the next election to place those folks onto some of our standing committees come the fall. So
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Inan, I'm sorry, Sung Hee Lee, you want to say anything to add?
No, LA covered everything.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And faculty status, the Welfare Committee, co-chair Scott Gilbert and Jennifer Sherry. I know Scott has excused absence. He couldn't be here. Senator Sherry.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to keep this brief. We haven't had a meeting this summer, of course, due to contracts. And so we'll hit the ground running when the semester begins. There have been a few things on the agenda that we're going to look into. Thanks to Josh for letting me know that they had updated the OP on the Faculty Senate page. I appreciate that. Another thing is that we were looking into is it was mentioned the other day about the operating papers and what the Faculty Senate's role is. We basically talked at the EC meeting about that it's more advisory instead of having to go through all of the operating papers again and slow up the process. So that's something that may be on the docket for us. We also are looking into, we received a reply from the provost on the decrease of faculty lines, so that'll be discussed. Dr. Zhao's appeal will also be discussed as well. And then I think that's about all right now. We have several things, as you can see. So thank you so much.
Sure, thank you. Very busy. I know your committee. Governance Committee, and we have co-chairs, Patrick McRoss and Connie Maxson. At least, Patrick, you're here, right?
Yes, we don't have anything to report. We may have some business in the fall on the basis of some issues that have come up this summer, but we're still waiting to to understand if that will be the case. But other than that, we have been largely quiet. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chancellor of Research, Gary Kinzel, are you here, Gary? I couldn't see him here. Okay, IPHE representative, Senator Lee Chang-Wang.
Hi, good afternoon. Since last May Faculty Senate meeting, FAC, Faculty Advisory Committee to IBHE, had two meetings. Mainly two issues we talked about. The first one we talked about in May and in June about dual credit. I think it's kind of interesting. We as at SIU hasn't been working on that much, but I see community colleges and then some of the four-year universities like us has looked at the issue more seriously, and then they opened up more dual credit. That might be one way to also get connected to high school students, local high school students. That's one message I get from that. The second issue is very interesting too, is talking about enrollment management. We had invited vice president of enrollment management from a company who gave us a presentation. We request a PPT. Once I received that, I will share with you and the campus. In that presentation, particularly impressive to me is they are asking universities to develop also a strategic plan. And then during the meeting, they gave us a 10-year perspective or outlook of Illinois high school students, the increase or decrease in number, what we're looking at, and then a couple of strategies on how universities can employ those. So that's a kind of interesting thing. I'm hoping the PPT I'm going to receive will provide more details, and then hopefully we can utilize that to do more discussion with that. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Li Chang. Any question for IPHE representative before we move on? Graduate Council representative, anyone?
Senator McGrath's got a question.
I apologize. I just had a quick follow-up for Li Chang, if you don't mind quickly.
Go ahead.
Thank you for your report, Li Chang. I'm sorry, did you say that they're going to discuss the demographic high situation with high school students this fall, or that it was discussed?
Oh, I think what I said is the enrollment management. What they presented to us is an outlook of high school graduate student, high school students who are graduating in the next 5 years or 10 years, and then they provided this like numbers. Is kind of interesting. They say, okay, there's a decrease, there's an increase, and what we are looking at, especially for the university, the enrollment like office to look at, because you need to have a perspective. If the total number of students, high school students, is decreasing, you want to increase your number. What would you do? What would be your strategy? Maybe you will need to look at the states near you, so that could increase the number. So that's kind of interesting kind of information to look at. And I was kind of interested in to say they were helping. The meeting I was in is at a community college, and that college they purchased some kind of service from that company. They were helping them to develop this strategic plan, how to enroll students, how to increase their enrollment, and all those type of things. It's kind of interesting to me. Thank you.
Yes, it is very interesting. And I recall that I'm sure maybe you or somebody else would know this better than I, but there's some kind of demographic doomsday that's coming up in like 2028 on the basis of the lower birth rates in this country. So I'm certain that probably the information that you were discussing, the provost and the chancellor and everyone is aware of, but it is good to be reminded of that and to be vigilant. So thank you for that report.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think I want to follow up that one. It's like I was kind of shocked by looking at the number. They were talking about Illinois, they talking about the entire like US, they talk about this. And then also they were talking about a little bit about that, I think provost and chancellor also talked about the adult education, you know, how these things played out. Maybe we need to take early action to compensate in terms of like the decrease number of like high school graduates, you know, all those things. It's kind of to me, it's like eye-opening to look at all the things, not only in terms of what we're going to do next year, is in a longer kind of period of time to develop a strategy. It's interesting. That's why I asked to say if they are willing to share their PPT, and then they said yes. Hopefully we're going to get that one. I want to share with all of you and to say what we can do based on that. Thank you.
Professor Lee, I know that I am a guest, but on this particular issue, if you don't mind, may I comment?
Okay. Well, because we voted to switch your agenda, we need to stick with the agenda. I'm sorry, Associate Chancellor. William, just give us a few more minutes, 3 to 5 more minutes. One more question for Lee Chang-Wang, Joe, then.
No, just a comment, and I'm sure the Associate Vice Chancellor will back me up on this because he and I talked about this. I remember before my actual service on the Faculty Senate, when I was proxying a couple times for other colleagues, that the previous chancellor was talking about the need to recruit, not in Illinois so much, because Illinois is declining student population because of our demographic challenges, but there are some states in the country, Texas, California, I seem to recall him thinking about, that don't have capacity. They don't have enough capacity in your universities, and therefore they have to send students away, because they know they can't house them. They don't have enough dorms. They don't have enough room slots for certain programs. So he was going all the time, if I recall, on the road to try to make partnerships with California community colleges about sending students our way. And I see that the Associate Vice Chancellor is nodding his head vigorously. So I'll defer to him on that because he knows more than I do. I'm just remembering this from a few years back. I defer to Associate Vice Chancellor for a brief comment if he wants to make one.
Yes, that's exactly correct. There is going to be a downturn in the number of high school graduates from roughly from 26 all the way to about 29, with the peak being around 28. We are very well aware of this and we're pre-planning for that. We have begun most of the migration is occurring from Illinois or from the northern states to Texas and to the southern states. So you've seen us this summer and this past spring sign articulation agreements there. We're working in Dallas and Houston in the real large markets there to sign articulation agreements to bring those students here either through the Saluki Step Ahead program and recruitment outside. We're actually hiring recruiters in the Texas market. Our next market is Kansas. We're looking at Denver as well as California. So we are expanding our efforts to go get students where they already have overcapacity. And they are, matter of fact, the superintendent for the Denver school district is a Saluki alum. And so we've been in personal contact with that person. So Dr. Wang, I appreciate your comments. I'd love to get a copy of the PowerPoint. We are aware and we're on top of that one.
Okay, thank you. I will for sure send you a copy once I get it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee Chang-Wang. We're going to move on to the Graduate Council representative. Anyone here?
Dr. Lee, I don't think you saw my hand raised for some time.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a quick comment about the high school student. So it's a fact that in the US, the population of 17 to 24-year-olds is declining. But there are other countries in the world where there are students, where there's actually a lot of students of that age. So that's in terms of strategically to think ahead, okay, is that something that we want to tap into? Because you might go to a couple of states here and there, but in the US, that sliver of population is declining and predicted to continue declining. So that's something to keep in mind, and to think, okay, where else is that population? And then to rethink what we mean by student. So when you think of a high school student, you think of the traditional student, but to think of students who could be non-traditional, so adult learners, and to think of whom all the people that a university can serve. You can serve the high school students who are looking for a college degree, but you can also serve employees who may not be looking for a college degree, but they're looking for credentials. And so I think just expanding our understanding of a student would be strategically positioning ourselves for the future.
Okay, thank you. We would like to move on unless you have a very urgent, important question. So, Graduate Council representative, anyone here? No. So, next one, Idaho Committee on Institutional Ranking, Education Quality, and we have co-chairs Senator Shramek and Senator Mike Heining here.
I just have a brief announcement to the rest of the Senate. We received, and thank you, by the way, to the Chancellor for facilitating this. We received at the end of June a report that all these submissions that we were submitting this year to U.S. News and Report. And so Dr. Lee, Dr. Hyland, and myself were given a few days to make comments and solicit. We also sent it out to available members of the committee. It had a lot, what I realized when I read the 77-page report was there was a lot of real wonderful data, really rich data about all facets of this university. And I wondered, and I'm asking this openly to the Chancellor right now, whether or how this could be utilized by the various standing committees of the Senate to help the administration in further improving this university, because there was a lot of great benchmark data there, and some data I've never, for example, seen, and I'm one of the people that sees a lot of data usually about the university, and I was learning new things all the time. And so I just wonder whether we could utilize this submission that we're doing every year to U.S. News Report as a way to kind of quality control even before June when we submit that. So I just raised that. Other than that, we're off on, as faculty are off contract right now, so we intend to resume our work in the fall. We hope to have a preliminary report written, I think, by the end of the year. And I'll open up for any questions or comments at that point.
Thank you, Joe and Mike. Senator Mike Heinon, you anything to add to this committee?
I have nothing to add. I think Joe did quite well with it.
Thank you. I know Joe covered a lot. I do not want to repeat what was said. I know Yinan Chukovsky there on the committee, and so am I. Okay, Lee Chang-Wang, questions?
Yeah, I'm just trying to recently they reported this kind of Columbia University. They have all this kind of things. I don't know what you guys will talk. Whether you guys talked about this issue. To me, it's very interesting and important committee to look at our university to compare with the other universities, how we are doing. But this is kind of, I said, oh, it's just tricky. How do you guys, look into this?
Right. So in case other senators are not aware of what Lee Ching is raising, there was a national controversy that popped up last spring, I think it was, where a mathematics professor at Columbia actually looked at the data submission and realized how the numbers were being finagled by Columbia to get a slightly higher rating than the year before vis-a-vis Princeton or vis-a-vis Harvard or whatever it is. I forget that piece of the data, but we were looking this spring, we were approaching it more holistically. This past spring, we were looking at students' retention and how we had Wendell Williams present to us. We were looking at international students. We were looking at basically the retention and the 6-year graduation averages, because they make up a sizable percentage, about 35% of the actual score. Just comes from those types of criteria. I think we're going to move this fall to other pieces of it, which are faculty salary, which are the number of PhDs or terminal degrees. There's a lot of other factors in how score gets raised. I don't think we should focus so much on the score yet, as much as where we sit right now is we're in the bottom 5th of national research universities. So our type of classification, public national universities, we're right now sitting in the bottom 20%. That's dangerous. I think we all know how and why that's dangerous in terms of reputation and long-term recruiting and retention of students and all the rest, quality faculty and all the rest. So I think it's not so much of competing with the likes of Harvard and Princeton. We're never likely to do that. It's more figuring out how we can improve further within our cohort of similar type universities. Did I
Thank you.
answer that right? Or is there anybody want to add further to it?
Thank you.
Okay, I would like to move on. Thank you very much for your questions and explanations. Now we're going to focus on special guest. We have Associate Chancellor Wendell Williams. You have a few minutes to address the no-show compliance and impact.
Thank you, Professor Lee. Professor Lee, members of the executive team and members of the Faculty Senate. This past June, we received notice from the Department of Education that they would do a review, a departmental review, annual review of the Title IV funds. Normally at most universities, this occurs about every 7 years. Interesting enough, the Southern Illinois University has never had a departmental review. In this review, they bring a team of auditors to the campus. They look at the financial aid programs and how they're distributed. They look at our CLARI information, our student right to know information. So they do a complete and thorough review of all financial aid programs. Some things that normally trigger this review would be a change of leadership, a change of financial aid directors, a change of chancellors, presidents. And we've had all of these in the past, but never review. SIUE had a review a few years back. And naturally, when auditors come, they're always going to find something. So because they didn't do their job if they didn't. So we got a chance to look at them. We provided them with the information. They did a review and they found one problem that was systemic in nature. And they asked us for some feedback and a process. And this process was the no-show report. According to the regulations, an institution has to return the funds of students who never showed up for any classes. If that student has not showed up for any classes, we should not request funds from that student. Currently, in our current process, the way we've been doing it is that we report those no-show students at the end of the semester through that grade of NS that is submitted on the final grade roster. We then send that information. We do exactly what we're supposed to do. We calculate, and if that student surely was a no-show, we return those funds back to Title IV. However, the regulations require for those funds to be turned back in within 30 days of our census date. And so with our current process of not getting that information or being made aware of that until the end of the semester, we have to institute a new process in place to meet these federal guidelines in order to keep the ability to distribute Title IV aid. And so we talked with the Executive Council last week and were asked to come and share with you this week. So what we are proposing and what we will need to do is that we will institute after the census date a no-show report. And so this is not just, we're not requiring faculty to take attendance, but it's talking about any kind of active participation inside of the classroom itself. So immediately after the 10th day, we will put a process in place so that we will become aware of those students who are never showed up, and we will return those funds within 30 days. So effective this coming fall, we will submit a grade for all students in all sections that's starting at the beginning of the term. And we look for the easiest and the simplest way to do that. And so the way to do that is by using that midterm faculty grade roster that we have out there. We will open that up. We will notify the faculty of the dates and the times that needs to be done. It will stay open for a week, and we will then calculate those no-show grades. So Professor Lee, in summary, we do have some documents that we will submit to you and share screenshots of how simple the process. It's just going to be either reporting that NS grade if the person has never attended any classes, or the IP grade if the student has attended one class or not. And that will be submitted through the grading process, just like you do with your normal grades. And we'll do that after the 10th day. Just as an update, neither SIUE had this process in place, and they weren't even doing the no-show grades at the end of the year. They were required to resubmit about $1.3 million in their return to Title IV. We don't think that our penalties will be that much because we have been resubmitting, but they do not want you to hold on to the interest of that money for the full academic year. They want you to do it within 30 days of being notified. So I'll attend to any questions. I know you've read the report and the document. If you have any questions for brevity, I'll stop right there, Professor Lee.
Thank you, Associate Chancellor Wendell Williams. Any question for him? Okay, we have two hands here. Senator Delana.
Thank you. I may have just misunderstood. In order to do this report for your class, it's easy if you have a small seminar, but if you have a huge class, I thought I heard you say you do not have to take attendance, but you wouldn't know if somebody didn't show up but never say anything unless you took attendance, right? So that's my first question. The second question is just, does this mean then that at the end of this initial period, 100% of faculty will be required to get online and do this report? Because I think currently the mid-unit reporting is not consistently done by everybody.
That is correct. So on the first, let me share my screen to you. You should know this report that is done. Let's see here. Are you seeing my screen that shows faculty grade using banner keyed entry?
Yes.
Okay, you should know that. And so you would get this particular roster that will be opened up. You would just click the NP grade, or the IP grade, or the NS grade. Once it's entered, you hit save, and that will be the submission that you do there. Now, how you go about documenting that, you're right. Some instructors, I remember, well, when I was teaching at Arkansas State, we had to do this all the time. And what we would do is that we would pass out a sheet and get everyone to sign in on that sheet and make sure that they was participation in at least one class during that first 10 days or so. But in an online class, that could be just acknowledgement of an email or them logging in or doing one assignment or something that it could be. That's the way you could do that for online classes.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Professor Michael Eicholz.
I guess I have a question and a comment. A lot of it has to do with similar to Elizabeth's. I'm just sitting here thinking of a classroom with 200 students in it. Especially if it's just done one time, then there's going to be, a day when, with 200 students, there's 10 or 15 students not in that class every day. If they happen to be there that day that you do this report, we're going to lose out then on 10 or 15 students associated with that. So I guess I'm just trying to think of, I don't know if there's our best management practices from other universities that have, been doing it this way. If there's something we can glean from that to help figure out the best approach to get this information recorded. And then
I don't know, great question, Professor. Don't know if it's the best approach, but the survey is not done just at one point. It's for anyone who has attended any of the first 10 days. It's just after the 10th day period. Hopefully, with all perfect students on that first day, everybody would be there. But if there were 10 or 15 students who were not, and they showed up at any point during that semester or during those first 10 days, then you don't have to count them. So it's not just a snapshot of that one day. That will be turned on from the beginning of classes all the way through 5 days after the 10th class day.
But unless we're doing something like taking roll or something like that every one of those days, there's going to be a lot of students that are missed through this process. So I guess I think my comment is more of just a recommendation for communicating this to faculty. Is one, provide some examples in this communication on how we might be able to get that enrollment, because in these larger classes, it's going to be really difficult to not spend the whole class time just trying to get enrollment. And then in addition to that, make sure you're very clear on communicating why this information is important. Because I know the response from a lot of the faculty are going to be, oh, this is just another administrative thing that's not going to be used, and they're making me do this and spend all this time working on this. So make it very clear that this is a requirement based on these Title IV funding, and we have to have this information, et cetera, in that community.
I deeply appreciate those directions, and we'll follow that too. Thank you.
Okay. Any response from, yeah, okay, Provost Camacho?
Yeah, just a quick thought, a few thoughts. Mike brought up some really good points, as well as others, and that is a student will be attending different classes. So if they don't get caught in that 200 level, they're not identified in the 200 level, 200 student class. They might be identified in the English, smaller 20 student section, or the comm studies. So because on a student, many instructors will be submitting the group that no-show grade or the IP grade. We might catch most students. That's one thing. Second thing is, in addition to informing instructors about this, we also be informing students that if you don't want to get dropped or don't want to get into trouble, please attend your classes. So I think it's a cultural sort of shift where we emphasize the importance of attending classes, particularly in the first 2 weeks. And then the last part is that in terms of, we're also talking about what if, say, a student has some situation in their life that really prevents them from coming the first 2 weeks, and so much is going on at home that they cannot even think of informing anybody, and they are able to attend week 3. But what if they get dropped because they didn't show up as a no-show, and they lose their financial aid? So we have to be able to have some mechanism in place to catch, like a safety net, to catch those students who might actually attend week 3. Also, we have to keep in mind this 2 weeks is for the regular semester, but if it's an 8-week course, all this will happen in week 1. So we are aware of some of these things and trying to put all the mechanisms in place.
And Professor Dalla, I see your comments there in the chat. If a student was reported as a no-show initially, and they later showed up after the grade was reported, that student could be added back to the course using their current process, that CRF course request form, and we can add that student back in it that way.
If we did that, do we lose the money though for them?
That student would, so the student would be reported as a no-show, then that student would not be, we will only have to refund the money if they were reported as a no-show in every class. So if they do it in if they are showing up in one class and not in your class, then we're not refunding on that particular student. So we would not. But if we did, then we will work that out with the Department of Education.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any more questions for Wendell? Okay, Joe.
I only raised this given a concern that we have around this university in recent years about staffing shortages, particularly in the civil service positions and various offices being tied down, because I worry that what kind of systems in place do we have, safeguards in place do we have to make sure that we don't have a high error rate when we do our accounting of which students are gone, never show up? Because I can see a possibility where, say I'm not teaching anything larger than a seminar this fall, but there are some semesters where I'm in Lawson teaching a large survey class and I don't do attendance in those classes normally. And I would suddenly have to do some kind of system to make sure students who don't come are recorded somehow. Mm-hmm. And I can see a scenario where I do my due diligence, Professor McGrath does his due diligence, and various other professors do their due diligence. But for some reason or another, the student shows up on the wrong spreadsheet. So what is our system? What is your plan B for that? Because I worry with the staffing dilemmas that we have at this university that we're going to have issues like that.
Well, in your genius way you put it, when we met with you at the executive committee, after we get the no-show reports, this is a great effort to move to our academic advisors and our retention and recruitment coordinators. It's a great way of providing the list of everybody who we're going to report before we report them back to them and let them say, well, wait, we know that this student may not be a no-show here, or I know that this student is here and actively involved. Let me verify this information. So we're gonna fully communicate this to everyone. I really like the idea of making sure, Mike, that we were very, very transparent in why we're doing what we're doing and how we're doing, because this isn't, if you think about it, if we know early on in the process, some of these students, they may have registered way back in June or July, and we did not know that they were actually decided to attend another university or go to community college for a semester. This is a way of saving them some money and making what's best for the student. And I think that's what the real goal and the real outcome. So we took your considerations from the executive council very seriously, and we're going to get that back out. So some of your recruiter and retention coordinators may say, hey, is this student actually a no-show? And you will let us know then.
There's a process to kind of just make sure it's accurate.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Associate Chancellor William Wendell. Could you please type your email here in the case other senators have a question, they can email to you directly.
I will do that, and I'll put my personal cell number so you won't have to worry about going through the other thing, and then I'll get off so you guys can do your faculty business.
Good,
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much, and we're going to move to the old business. With regard to the Zoom meeting or in person in September. So we need to decide it once by month. So for September's meeting, shall we continue the same format? Okay, Senator Denana.
Thank you. My question is whether we can move to a large room, because we've always met in that river room where we fill the entire room, and I'm still uncomfortable being squished into a room shoulder to shoulder. But there are lots of places on campus we could meet where we can spread out a little bit. So if we could meet in a large room, I think we'd benefit enormously from being in person.
Okay, to answer your question, I think Josh reserved the room in student service room building for 165 or 166, right? So it's not very large. And then I think Bethany, you reserved the large room, which does not have like a hybrid internet function. We have to connect with School of Medicine. Maybe you can give us some update.
So the room I reserved was a lecture hall in Lawson, which seats 230 or 250 people. excuse me, to address those concerns. Since everyone's going to have a very different idea of what social distance is, and talking to different people on Senate, it's become clear that we need a very large room. So that classroom does have internet capability, and if we can get the other people on Zoom, we should, from Springfield, we should be able to accommodate everyone. So I have not hybrid taught in Lawson lecture halls, but I have hybrid taught in other lecture halls. So and they have the same basic setup with internet and computer and screen. So Josh and I actually, at some point when I am no longer under the throes of COVID, are going to go around and look at these rooms and make sure they have that capability. But my guess is we should be able to both accommodate everybody and be able to do hybrid in that room as well. So thanks.
Any other comments? Mike?
I would just like to reiterate Elizabeth's comment that I think if we've got a facility that will hold us, we're able to maintain good social distancing, then I feel very strongly that we should meet in person, because I really think we benefit from that.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, Bethany?
Excuse me. Yeah. So is this issue something that we can, I don't know, play it by ear for September? I know that's a hard thing to do because there's so many of us in Senate. But can we? So what I guess I'm thinking about doing is once Josh and I can take a look at things, we can generate a report that would be sent out to all of Senate with all of the logistical information with the room. As well as pictures, so that everybody can see the room, see what the capabilities are, and then we can all make a decision at that point.
Okay, I think that's a good plan. It needs to, we make sure, we have a plan, it will be workable, then we'll have more discussion. That makes sense to you?
Yes.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Josh and Bethany, for this important project. We will depend on you, okay? So, new business? All right, if we have no new business, we're going to have a motion to adjourn the meeting. Okay, Joe moved, anyone second? Okay, Bethany second, so all in favor, just raise your hands. Thank you very much, especially in the summer, some of you off the contract, thank you.